It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Yes, welcome back, you beautiful people. We're still opening up right here on S3, and we're talking about the summer, we're talking about December, we're talking about Mzansi's heat, and unfortunately with that comes potential sunburn. Now, sunburn can occur within 15 minutes, and the damage caused is permanent, irreversible, and adds up with each exposure to the sun. Now, skin cancer is probably one of the most common cancers worldwide, and SA has one of the highest monitored ultraviolet UV levels in the world. Now, this results in one of the highest skin cancer rates globally. However, we are joined by our friend and medical professional, Dr. Emil Reed, in the building as we discuss this all-important topic as we head into the festive season. Now, if you have any questions for the doctor about skin cancer, then you can head over to the Expresso Facebook page to post your questions, and we'll come through with all the advice that we can. Firstly, though, before we get into it, Doc, how are you doing?
Fantastic.
Lovely.
Amazing to be back.
Your skin's looking good. Your suit's looking good as well. I think you don't have too much of a problem, but a lot of South Africans do. So before we get into anything, let's talk about exactly what skin cancer is.
Well, skin cancer, usually we know that there's some sort of insult to our skin, which can either be the sun, main culprit, or even something like sunbeds being a culprit. Other environmental, chemical things disturb the growth of our skin cells, and it becomes disorganized, and those disorganized DNA-damaged skin cells just proliferate and eventually lead to some form of skin cancer.
All right, so the sun is actually potentially acting as a catalyst in that process.
Absolutely.
And causing some sort of stimulation that might result in that. So maybe it's a good idea to then also chat about what type of skin cancers are there? Are there more than one? What types do you get?
Well, there's a few. There's two classes. One we call the melanoma type of cancers, and that mainly comes from melanin in your skin. So melanomas are probably the most dangerous types of skin cancers that you can get. It's very aggressive, and it needs to be catched quite early, otherwise it spreads, it metastasizes. On the other side, you get the more common type called the non-melanoma types of skin cancers, and those include basal cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, and that is a very slow growing type of cancer, the most commonest of all. And then a second one called the squamous cell carcinoma, which is a little bit more rapid growing than the basal cell carcinoma, but the melanoma type is the most dangerous type of cancer. And you know, everybody knows Bob Marley. He was one of those people who succumbed to melanoma.
Interesting stuff. I'm starting to learn more about this. I had no idea. And one thing also I have no idea about is I often hear people talking about their moles and certain moles becoming an issue, certain moles potentially even being cancerous. How do you know when that's actually the case? Is there a change that takes place in the mole? Maybe I know all of us have it, even regardless of certain skin types and colors, but more prominent in others than some. But what exactly is that whole scenario there? I hear it being spoken about a lot. I actually have no idea what's going on though.
Absolutely. You remember the last few months we've been speaking a lot about different type of cancers,
yes.
Breast cancer, testicular cancer, etc. And the important thing for all of us is to actually get to know our own bodies. So we need to know where our moles are and also how our moles look. So when you find that there's a change in the mole's behavior, you need to see a doctor ASAP. And those changes that worries us that there might be some form of cancer developing is what we call the ABCDE. And A standing for asymmetry, so it's becoming chaotic in nature. And then we also find that the borders develop these tentacles, and which is not normal. C, where there's a change in color, blue, red, purple, gray, whatever type of color it may be. And then we find that those moles undergo what we call evolution. So they actually change constantly, and they become bigger. So as soon as you see that, the important thing is to then go and see a specialist. The most important thing is self-examination once a month, and if you're worried, go and see a dermatologist.
All right, well, doctor, thank you so much for that. We're just touching on the conversation of skin cancer and looking after our skin right now, but don't go anywhere. The conversation will continue in just a moment, and we'll dive skin deep into this one.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Yes, Mzansi, welcome back. We are continuing the conversation, opening up with your feel-good breakfast show right now. And we're talking about the dangers of all the fun that we're going to have in summer. And we're talking about sunburn. Now, it can occur, again, within 15 minutes, and the damage caused is permanent. It's irreversible, and it adds up with each exposure to the skin. And skin cancer is one of the most common cancers worldwide, and SA has one of the highest monitored ultraviolet UV levels in the world. Now, this obviously results in one of the highest skin cancer rates globally. And, of course, we are still out here with the knowledgeable Dr. Emil Reed is with us here to discuss the topic and the all-important questions that we have right now. It's the summer spirit that we're tackling. So if you have any questions, of course, come through with them on our social media channels. Head over to the Expresso Facebook page, post your question, and we'll be addressing it later in part 3 of this interview. But for now, let's tackle some more of the skin cancer conundrums that we do have. Dr. Emil Reed, we were talking about moles potentially modifying themselves or turning into cancer. But what happens once we've actually identified that we have that cancer, and especially with an example like a mole, what happens next? What are our treatment options? What can we expect once we actually go and seek the help from a professional such as yourself?
Okay, the most important thing is that we make a definite diagnosis. Find out, is it a malignant tumor or skin tumor, and then to decide which type it is, whether it's a melanoma, whether it's a basal cell carcinoma, whether it's a squamous cell carcinoma, and they all behave differently.
Okay.
So if one look at something like a melanoma, very aggressive, can infiltrate your skin, can infiltrate your lymphatic system, and also spread via the blood to other organs. So many times we see people presenting with melanomas quite late, with a stage 4 already being present. So at that point, you can't cure patients with disseminated melanoma. They require radiotherapy, they require chemotherapy. So usually the best thing to do is to get diagnosed quite early, where you can still do surgery, meaning you cut it out and you remove it completely with clear borders. And you can even do something like cryotherapy or surgery, where you actually freeze these lesions with nitrogen. And those are the different skin modalities. Or treatment modalities. So the sooner you find an abnormality, the sooner you can actually get help.
Now, speaking of South Africa, obviously there's so many myths when it comes to cancer, when it comes to our sun and our skin, and also the fact that we have such a diverse nation. So we've got the entire spectrum when it comes to the skin types, from light all the way to dark. One of the biggest misconceptions I've seen is that dark skin isn't really prone to skin cancer. Is this true? Can we open up this discussion and actually really dive in on what is the story there? Is there any truth in it, or is it just a myth? We all need to apply the same rationale.
It's a myth. So the most important thing, having a darker skin color like myself, doesn't protect you in developing skin cancer. We actually had the example earlier of Bob Marley, and we all know where he comes from and how he looked. And it is true that people with fairer complexion, milky sort of skin with the freckles and red hair are probably the highest risk group, where people that are slightly darker skin have a lower risk. But the one problem with people with darker skin colors, usually they are the individuals who present extremely late. And we frequently find melanomas in those dark skin individuals presenting as a disseminated disease. And usually we find melanomas on the palms on the soles of their feet, where usually that is not exposed to the sun. So having a dark skin doesn't protect you, but on the other side, usually they present quite late. So the important thing is get to know your own skin.
Yeah, get to know your skin and get to know the facts as well. Obviously, Dr. Emile Reed sharing a lot of it. And for you, Mzansi, just because you're blessed with dark skin doesn't mean you have to cover up from the sun. We're all dealing with similar problems right now, and especially in South Africa with our high UV rate. But of course, in our last and final part of this discussion, we're going to be chatting about all the questions that you have come through on our social media pages. So keep coming through. We'll be answering them in just a bit, and don't go anywhere.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Yes, you're still locked in. It's your Feel Good Breakfast Show, and we're still carrying on the important conversation when it comes to skin cancer, especially right here in South Africa, and it being the most common cancers worldwide, and it has, well, in our country especially, we have one of the highest monitored ultraviolet UV levels in the world. Now, this is resulting in one of the highest skin cancer rates globally. And with the summer months still ahead, we've still been chatting to and continuing the conversation with Dr. Emile Reed regarding skin cancer. And now we are taking to the socials to address your skin cancer concerns. Doc, before we get into it, Doc, I've got to say thank you so much for sharing your valuable information. I think for a lot of us, we have lots of questions. We have some of these myths and rumors, and I believe that we'll be debunking a bit of that now. So let's take a look at our socials and see what questions we've got to serve you right now. And starting off with Jane Mokwena. She says, hi, I'm a young black woman aged 36 years old, and I get sunburned so easily. And plus, my skin is super sensitive, always super dry and cracky, mostly in winter. So I want to ask, am I at risk of getting skin cancer at some point in my life? Is skin cancer preventable? And how do I look after my skin properly in a way that is not costly? Absolutely brilliant question coming in there. Thank you so much, Jane.
Brilliant question.
Yeah.
Absolutely loaded. And I think the most important thing, Jane, as we said just before the break, if you have a dark skin, there is no reason for you not to develop skin problems. So you need to take care of your skin in exactly the same way. When you tan, especially in the summer and in our sunlight, the chances of you developing skin cancer over the long term is extremely high. So tanning equals skin damage. UVB rays causes skin damage, causes DNA issues with your cells, and can lead to cancer. So protect yourself, use sunscreen, probably start off with a 30, although I will advise a 50. And then the important thing is when you are in the sun and at the beach, you need to put sunscreen on regularly, every 2 hours, even if you are using a sun protection factor 50. Every time you swim, every time you take a shower, every time you sweat, you need to reapply the sunscreen. So SPF 50 is probably the minimum to go.
Especially in South Africa right now, the sun is popping off.
Exactly.
Now, I love that question, Jane. Thank you so much for coming through. We've got another one coming through here, and let's have a look. And this one is from Jane Ann Wilson. How does the risk of skin cancer developing differ between adults and children? Is it more dangerous for kids to be in the sun versus adults? Nice question, Jane Ann. What do you think of that, Doc?
Well, I think it's a fantastic question. And obviously the damage that we suffer due to skin when we are young will actually influence our lives when we are getting older. So the important thing is you please make sure that your kids are covered. Please make sure that they wear big hats, broad-brimmed hats to actually cover their face and their necks, and keep them out of the sun as long as possible. Avoid the sun between 10 in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because that is when the sun rays are at its strongest. Obviously, when it comes to children, there are formulations that we can use for children over the age of 1 year old. And one just need to make sure, again, that we reapply it frequently in order for it not to sort of go off. Because sometimes we put on a sun protection factor 50, and because of the way we apply it, it's a 25. And when we're using sun protection 50, we times it by 5, meaning it is, 400 minutes, and that is the amount of hours that it protects you. So quite a good marker.
Okay.
The only problem is when you swim, when you take a shower, when you bathe, when you wipe it off, you actually need to reapply it again.
Yeah.
So for the kids younger than that, there is no sunscreen available because their skin is too thin and too premature, although we don't know whether sunscreen can actually affect their skin in a negative way as well. But we need to protect our kiddies because otherwise they're going to end up with damaged skin when they are adults.
Yeah, I love that information. I love the advice, Dr. Milreed. Thank you so much. Honestly, thank you. He's preparing us for summer, and preparing us for something very important, especially in our country. And of course, I can't thank you for providing all that advice and for answering your questions. Mzansi, thank you for asking us these questions because we love serving you up. And of course, protect yourself. No matter what skin type you have, the summer is going to be a hot one. The UV factor is high, and you want to protect that beautiful skin that you've been blessed with. And maybe don't spend so much time in the sun and instead head in the kitchen and prepare something delicious like this.